The economic downturn has not fallen equally on all Americans, and those least able to shoulder the burden have been hardest hit. In particular, despite progress, joblessness continues to fall disproportionately on lower-wage workers in the service sector and on African Americans and Hispanics. Inflation has increased notably and will likely remain elevated in coming months before moderating. As the economy continues to reopen and spending rebounds, we are seeing upward pressure on prices, particularly because supply bottlenecks in some sectors have limited how quickly production can respond in the near term. These bottleneck effects have been larger than anticipated, but as these transitory supply effects abate, inflation is expected to drop back toward our longer-run goal. Very low readings from early in the pandemic, as well as the pass-through of past increases in oil prices to consumer energy prices, also contribute to the increase, although these base effects and energy effects are receding. The process of reopening the economy is unprecedented, as was the shutdown at the onset of the pandemic. As the reopening continues, bottlenecks, hiring difficulties, and other constraints could continue to limit how quickly supply can adjust, raising the possibility that inflation could turn out to be higher and more persistent than we expect. The concept of transitory is really this. It is that the increases will happen. We're not saying they will reverse. That's not what transitory means. It means that the increases in prices will happen, so there will be inflation, but that the process of inflation will stop, so that there won't be further. When we think of inflation, we really think of inflation going up year upon year upon year upon year. That's inflation. When you have inflation for 12 months or whatever it may be, I'm just taking an example and not making an estimate, then you have a price increase, but you don't have an inflation process. Again, I don't mean that producers are going to take those price increases back. That's not the idea. It's just that they won't go on indefinitely. So to the extent people are implementing price increases because raw materials are going up or labor costs or something's going up, the question really for inflation really is, does that mean they're going to go up the next year by the same amount? So you're going to be in a process where the inflation process gets going, and that happens because people's expectations about future inflation move up, and we don't think that's happening. There's no evidence that it's happening. All the evidence is that it's not happening. In terms of COVID and the Delta strain, I'll say a couple things. Of course, it will have significant health consequences for many, and we need to keep that in mind before we mention and move to the economic questions. This is rising cases in a number of parts of the country, and some forecasts are for them to rise quite significantly. We'll see. What we've seen, though, is with successive waves of COVID over the past year and some months now, there has tended to be less in the way of economic implications from each wave, and we will see whether that is the case with the Delta variety. But it's certainly not an unreasonable expectation. So with Delta, we're just going to have to watch. Again, with a reasonably high percentage of the country vaccinated and the vaccine apparently being effective. We're not experts on this, but it seems like a good going in estimate would be that the effects will probably be less. There probably won't be significant lockdowns and things like that. But again, those are not decisions for us, or nor is it something we'd be expert in. In terms of the channels, this is kind of speculation, but it just is that people, you could imagine school districts deciding to wait a month or two for the Delta wave to quiet. I'm not saying this will happen, but that it's easy to imagine that. It's also easy to imagine that some people might say, you know what, I'm just gonna wait a couple of months before going back to work. Wouldn't be hard to imagine that happening. If schools don't open, then caretakers have to stay home, and if people don't go back into the labor force, then the job growth won't be as strong. Those kind of things. So it doesn't. Again, sitting here today, not being able to really know the future, it doesn't seem as though the effects will be very large, but there may be effects, and it may be that the effect is to slow the economy down just for a period of months, or not. There are many parts of the country where it might not have an effect, and we're just going to have to see what the economic effects are.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.